This is Ga-Yun, the youngest president of the elite warrior school and the only one who won every single duel in the academy. When a boy shows up, completely beaten up, challenging her to a sparring match, Gon was surprised since it was basically a guaranteed win. She accepted. Everyone headed to the makeshift room where the fight would take place. Gain, fully confident, walked in slowly, radiating power, and in a split second, she threw a kick that would have landed on anyone. But somehow the boy managed to dodge it. That one dodge was enough to make everyone in the room hold their breath. She started throwing attack after attack, and the boy managed to dodge every single one with ease. Gon realized she couldn't land a single hit on him. Said it had been a long time since someone dodged her attacks for this long, and offered draw. For the best fighter in the school, to not be able to touch a beaten-up boy was straight-up embarrassing. When the boy refused a draw, she got angry and went at him with everything she had. The moment she got close to him, she almost got hit by a dangerous kick that could have cost her the whole fight. The boy didn't stop there. Even though he wasn't at 100%, he was fighting on equal terms with Gon, and that shocked her. He decided to fight seriously and said he would use every last bit of energy left in his body. At lightning speed, he started throwing a chain of kicks that she could barely dodge. With his energy running out, he decided to put everything into one single powerful attack. But the instructor outside saw things were getting dangerous and ended the fight, stopping the boy's final attack. She was shocked because she knew that if he had been at full strength, she would have lost. She walked away with one question on her mind. Who is that guy? This is Jae Young. She didn't know him because in the past, he only used his power when he had no other choice. Day to day, he was just another regular school kid with only one goal, to help his father. Many had already forgotten. But this is the great hero song. When planet Earth was attacked by monsters and demons, Song unlocked a power that no one had ever achieved before. Thanks to that power of his planet Earth, managed to return to normal. But nowadays, to survive, Jae-Yun works as a dungeon smuggler, illegally entering restricted zones, collecting forbidden items, and delivering them to clients who pay well. He's done this 371 times. One day on the job with his boss, Jae-Yun, a client got angry, saying he wanted the best warrior and told the MC to get lost. When the boy calls him an old idiot, the client lost it and sent his bodyguard to teach the MC a lesson. The guy was a 10-class fighter, his body trained to the absolute limit. The giant walked up to the boy and tried to land a punch on him, but the boy dodged it with ease. The giant was impressed and came back with an even harder punch, but took a kick straight to the chin that crashed his windows. The old man was speechless watching the boy fight. The Jigachad woke up furious, pushing his body to the absolute max with everything he had. Now he could take bullets, aerial bombs, and still walk away without a scratch. The guy turned into an armored titan. When he attacks, only Jarong dodges because he knows he can't afford to take a punch from this beast. While he kept dodging his master, told him to wrap it up already. The Scully smiles, grabs a piece of iron, and the moment Chris bumps down attacks him. Jarong with unreal strength lands a punch right in this tank's face that sent him straight to dreamland. The bald guy who underestimated him now knows this boy is way stronger than he looks. When he was a kid, he would just watch his father train. Sean had a unique power, and it fascinated him. The boy started spending every single day training alongside his father, growing stronger with each passing day until he reached the level of power he's at today. After the confrontation, Gaen revealed to the bald guy that the price had gone up, doubled now. The guy looked at the boy and accepted on the spot. The boy was calmly drinking water when he found out the mission was in the city of Udo, a city taken over by the most dangerous monsters in the world, Imperial Wasps. Some time ago, the government assembled a task force that managed to kill the queen. One of the 7 adventurers stole the royal jelly, the liquid the wasps used to create a new queen, and fled to the Yggdra forest. Today, he's considered dead. When Jawa said that this royal jelly can bring someone back from the brink of death and cure any disease, John got excited because this could save his father who has an incurable poison eating away at his body. The MT grabs all his gear and opens the gate to the toughest mission of your life. Yu-Jeong steps into a mountain area and shields his eyes from the bright sun. Ever since adhesion dungeons appeared across the world, 2 in Korea stood out as the biggest. One was Judo, a dungeon merged with a volcanic mountain range. The other had fused with the Yggdra jungle, and that was where the boy was getting ready to explore. The Yggdra dungeon sits in what used to be Wedo, right in Seoul. With Wedo at its center, Mapo, Yangon, and nearby areas all fell under its control, and most of it is still unexplored. A lot of this region is only D rank, but Udo itself, where the wasp is Shrank. That's where the person carrying the jelly tried to move it before heading to the meeting point in Barama. Jaeb explains that after reaching Barama, the transporter lost contact. He might have died, but that's not the only option. Either way, Xiao Jun just needs to reach the spot and recover the royal jelly. Before Yosi leaves, Zaioi stops him and tells him again not to lose focus, just do the job. Putting on his mask with a grin, the boy asks if his boss thinks he'd run away. Xiao Satwan answers that he knows the kid isn't dumb enough for that. Then his boss tells him one more thing. Be careful. The royal jelly is priceless, and humans aren't the only ones ready to die for it. After that warning, the boy uses a rope to climb down the cliff and enter the forest. Once he reaches the middle of it, he figures the whole place can probably smell that strange scent. Then he looks down, and something makes him freeze in shock and irritation. In the dirt is a huge footprint. Xiao Yong realizes all kinds of creatures will be drawn in by the jelly smell. Deeper in the woods, birds suddenly burst into the air as a pointed-eared girl runs through the trees completely out of breath. She stops behind a tree for a second to catch her breath. Her name is Jing Jean Serum, a first-year warrior facing the worst moment of her life. This dungeon trip was supposed to be an easy intermediate exam, but she's frozen with fear. Instead of a simple test, she ran into a monster that should never have been there. The thing chasing her is a giant beast. Jin tries to stay still and quiet, hoping the creature will pass her by, but then a gust of wind heads her way, and she realizes the truth she didn't want to face. This exam was supposed to be easy. She only had to gather as many coins as possible before time ran out. Even if the test was meant to feel like real combat, the area was set to the lowest rank and should have been simple. It was beginner training, something any new adventurer should clear. Then the monster sneaks right up behind her, grinning when she finally notices it. Jin panics. The monsters here were supposed to be weak and stupid, but this one clearly isn't. The four-armed giant swings at her with overwhelming force, and she barely dodges. Running won't work. Not against something that big. She has to choose another option. In that moment, all she can do is hope for a miracle, so she pulls out her bow and grabs 3 arrows. Even with the odds against her, Jin decides to fight. The 3-star Primal Titan starts charging a brutal breath attack. Desperate to stay alive, she fires all 3 arrows, but the monster calmly raises a hand and blocks them with ease. Jin realizes its hide is tougher than a tank, and her chances are almost 0. Then, the primate swings one of its 4 arms into the ground, sending wind and rocks flying everywhere. She escapes again with quick movement, and even while airborne, Jin gets another arrow ready. She knows her arrows can't really pierce it, but she has no choice. 3 more shots fly out, this time boosted by wind. They only scratch the Titan, and it doesn't even flinch. Staring at it, Jin realizes she never needed to kill it with those shots. She only wanted to lure it closer and make it drop its guard for 1 second. Now she knocks another arrow, this one filled with fire. Sure, her plan might work. When she lands, she pours even more magic into it, because her class lets her load magic into the tips of arrows. With everything on the line, Jin steels herself to strike back. Using her flame bombardier skill, she fires a blazing shot that rips across the ground. The magic she can place in an arrow has almost no limit. So, for her last move, she chooses the biggest explosion she can make. The shot hits, and a huge blast lights up the forest. She stares at the impact point, trying to see if the monster is finally dead. That attack should have killed any monster with a 3-star threat level. But when the smoke clears, Jin is horrified. The monster survived by clinging to 2 trees. It barely escaped, and now it looks furious, enraged that its prey dared fight back. Even her strongest move meant nothing if it didn't land cleanly. Her thoughts spiral, and Jin starts to believe she might die here. Before she can decide to run, the monster drops to the ground and charges straight at her. Jin turns and bolts the other way, trying to escape, while the Titan chases her with a crazed look like it's enjoying the hunt. Then, like a miracle, our protagonist suddenly appears and slams his weapon into the Titan. Jin looks up in disbelief, staring at her savior like he's a hero. Still airborne, Jirian meets the eyes of the girl he just saved. While Jin can barely process what happened, the giant took a hard hit to the chin and staggers. Still trying to keep its balance, he lands safely on a tree and thinks that even a clean shot to the chin wasn't enough. Looking down, he notices the beast staring up at him with a vicious glare. He pulls a strange item from his pocket, an adventurer tool that looks like a weapon with bait in one hand and the tool in the other. The boy rushes in to bring the beast down. Watching this, Jin is stunned. She never thought anyone would charge that monster heathen. To her, he's running straight to his death, and the furious Titan attacks with 2 arms at once. Jarong shouts for her to close her eyes right now. She does understand why, but he quickly aims the tool at the monster's face. They're second from a deadly clash where only one can survive. Then the tool in Jarong's hand starts giving off a powerful light, and he shuts his own eyes. A blinding flash bursts right in front of the monster, lighting up the forest and leaving the Titan temporarily blind. Siram follows his warning, closing her eyes and raising an arm to shield herself. The monster has no idea what happened and is fully hit by the blast of light straight to its eyes. It roars in rage as the protagonist lands, thinking that tool is spent now and it was his last one. The item he used is called a stun light, a tool made from the scales of an oscillating fish found in deep ocean dungeons. Its special effect, incapacitate, made it worth the cost, so adventurers loved it. But because it worked too well, people abused it, and many ended up losing their eyesight. That's why making them is now completely banned, even with her eyes shut. Syro was still affected by how strong the flash was. So, she slowly starts opening them again. As he runs past her with his baton, Yujarong tells her he bought her a few seconds, and now she needs to survive on her own. MC thinks that as long as he doesn't directly help an adventurer too much inside the dungeon, he probably won't get reported. He remembers his boss saying smugglers are like cockroaches to adventurers. And since the reward for turning one in is huge, one careless move could get him sold out to the government. He had no plan to get involved any further. But while running, Zhang noticed something that made him tense up. Someone was following right behind him. It was the girl from earlier. Realizing she was chasing him, he groaned, unsure what she wanted. Even though she was out of breath, Anisha kept running after the boy who saved her, determined to thank him. But after everything he'd learned about not getting tricked, he made up his mind and burst forward. In a split second, Anisha lost sight of him completely. She freezes in confusion, sure he was just there a moment ago. Then her guard drops, and a baton slams in her neck, knocking her back. Jarong forces her to the ground and calls her an idiot, demanding to know what she was trying to do. Anisha quickly says she meant no harm. She only chased him to thank him for saving her. The protagonist coldly asks if she really expects him to believe that he's not dumb enough to fall for it. Then she admits there was more to it. She knew he was a smuggler. Still, she says she wasn't trying to catch him. She wanted to hire him instead, and that makes him pause, noticing the Warrior Academy emblem on her clothes. He lets out a sigh and eases up. He pulls the baton from her neck and warns that he was willing to overlook this, but this is her last chance to stay alive. As he turns to leave, Zhang says he has no interest in dealing with a Warrior Academy student. His voice turns even colder as he warns Anisha that if she gets in his way again, he'll bury her for real. Hearing that, she goes quiet for a second. Even so, she doesn't back down. She says smugglers are worth 50 million and hunters must be worth 400 million. Jurion takes that as an insult and instantly flares up, furious. But then he notices something in her hand, and his whole reaction changes, and Isa is holding the blood of Enkil necklace. She says getting one would normally take catching 5 smugglers over 200 million one total. Sweating, she offers it as just a down payment and promises even more if MC helps her pass the exam. Staring at the necklace, he mutters that she isn't just a spoiled brat. She's insanely rich and totally crazy. Anisha shoots back that crazy or not doesn't matter. Holding the necklace up again, she says what matters is that this chance could change his life. Jurang sighs again and says he figured something like this would happen. Then he apologizes, saying this is Anisha's fault, and he doesn't really need a reason to kill her. That leaves her shaken, and she asks what he means. A huge shadow suddenly blocks the light. He looks up and says he already warned her. He reminds her she only had a few seconds, and the enraged primate beast comes crashing down from above. Having tracked them after the flash, the monster slams down with all 4 arms, but both of them barely get away. Suddenly, Anisha sees something flying toward her. She catches it and realizes it's the same baton Jurong was using. He tells her not to just stand there and asks if she remembers the fire attack from earlier. She thinks back to coating the arrow in flames, and he orders her to do the same with the baton, then throw it back. Anisha panics and says she's almost out of magic. The protagonist cuts her off and tells her to figure it out. As the monster gets ready to strike again, he warns that he can't keep its attention with his bare hands much longer, so she needs to hurry. Anisha starts pouring magic into the baton. She realizes she has less than a quarter of her power left after using so much in her last attack. While Jurong fights the Titan, she knows this little magic won't be enough to seriously hurt it. For a moment, she thinks about running while he's distracting the monster. Meanwhile, MC keeps fighting with everything he has just to stay alive. Annoyed but determined, he keeps moving and pulls the monster's focus onto himself. Then, with perfect speed and aim, the flaming baton flies back to him, and Jirian catches it cleanly. Anisha had used up nearly everything she had to throw it. She can't believe she's risking this much for one person. Thinking she must be crazy, he leaps up, spins the baton, and says he's disappointed. He tells her this is nowhere near a quarter of the power she used before, and honestly, it's pathetic. Even so, he says it should be enough. Full of confidence, he He grips the baton and charges the monster. As the fight reaches its peak, Anisha remembers something Warrior Academy students hear all the time. Against a monster, an adventurer doesn't win with strength alone. What matters most is timing, and Zhurong is showing it perfectly, dodging every attack and waiting for the right opening. The real key is landing the right hit at the right time. And when the primate titan misses, it leaves itself wide open. In other words, what adventurers should value most is making every strike count. Watching the protagonist, Anisha is deeply impressed. After avoiding every blow and waiting for the perfect moment, Zhang swings the baton into the titan's chin. An explosion erupts, and when the smoke clears, the beast's lower face is completely ruined. MC's glasses shatter from the impact. But once he sees the attack worked and the fight is over, a small smile appears on his face. Then a memory from Anisha's past comes back. As a child, she had just finished playing with her friends and was getting ready to head home. A bodyguard was waiting for her with a car to take her back. She says goodbye, and her friends happily talk about meeting again the next day. But Anisha then overhears them gossiping, saying she was lucky because she could get anything she wanted. To her, that was completely wrong. Because of who she was, there were many things she could never truly have. Her father led Jinsong Group, the fourth largest company in South Korea, famous around the world. The heir of that group married an elf from another world. And from that union came someone unforgettable. That child was Anisha, a half-elf girl with dark hair and a stubborn heart. She admired adventurers more than anyone and looked up to them deeply. More than anything, Anisha wanted to become one herself. No matter what, she had to give up. Later on, a blonde elf tells her that dream is impossible. Anisha lies on the ground completely worn out as he says her elven blood is weak and she's almost human. He tells the person beside him that pushing her any further is wrong and that someone should talk her out of this. Then Xiu says he isn't forcing her. He's only supporting her dream of becoming an adventurer. He adds that elven talent isn't required for that, and the elf agrees. Compared to an average human, he says Anisha does have decent talent. But even so, she's only a little above average, and all her efforts still won't be rewarded. The blonde elf says he needs to make one thing clear to Senunju. His daughter isn't some ordinary human girl. She'll never quit on her own, and she's just as stubborn as her mother, who is the elf's sister. Still, he bluntly says that no matter how hard she tries, she'll never stand among the true monsters. At best, if she keeps getting back up, she might become fairly capable. Time passes, and Anisha is older now. The elf concludes that with enough effort, she might at least earn praise as an exceptional normal human. Even so, she was born with other advantages: wealth, status, and bloodline. According to him, those things will only make her hard work feel. Some limits simply can't be broken. People will mock her out of jealousy, and she may end up completely alone, seen as nothing more than a spoiled rich girl. And even if Anisha becomes strong, he says she still won't endure that loneliness for long because isolation breaks everyone. Back in the present, Zhang has defeated the monster. After everything she just witnessed, Anisha is left speechless. When he lands, the monster's body crashes down too. One direct hit to the face had completely destroyed it. He starts walking off with the baton in hand when something brushes his ear, making him stop. He glances over and sees Anisha staring at him like she's seen a ghost. Looking at his face, she mutters that it's impossible. Her savior is just a high school kid. Zhang touches his face, realizes what happened, and gets instantly annoyed at himself for slipping up. He remembers Jahawin warning him to be careful with his glasses since they were expensive. Holding the odd glasses, he says they look plain and shouldn't cost much. His boss shuts that down right away. Those glasses block face scans, change your voice, and carry over 4 magic effects. Now in the present, those pricey glasses are smashed to pieces from Jahawin's last attack. He covers his face and mutters that this whole thing's going badly and it's really getting on his nerves. Still trying to process it, the girl asks if he's a veteran from the Warrior Academy. Already fed up because he only wanted a simple job, the protagonist bluntly says no. Then he turns to her furious and demands the thing she promised him. To his surprise, she hands over the necklace right away without arguing. That only reminds him how loaded Jin is, so he quickly snatches the jewel before she can study it any longer. With the necklace in hand, Jae-young checks it over and confirms it's real. Then Jin asks if he needs more money. She says that even if he doesn't go to the Warrior Academy, adventure training schools are still really expensive. Before she can offer anything, MC cuts in and says he doesn't attend any adventurer school. That shocks her even more, and he tells her she's got him all wrong. Jahawin explains he's never gone to any adventurer school, not even close. He goes to a normal school instead. Jin then asks who taught him to fight. He says no one. Walking closer with both hands in his pockets, he calmly adds that he taught himself. This time, Jin gets annoyed. She snaps that there's no way that's true. His movement and timing are way too sharp for someone with no training, so she insists he has to be messing with her. Instead of answering politely, Jahawan suddenly throws something at her, and it smacks her in the face. She catches it and asks what he just threw. After checking it, Sairo realizes it's a school ID. She pulls the card free and reads it carefully. It's from Dongan Secondary School, and the name on it is Yuhim. Jihawan tells her not to bother remembering it. His school is just one more ordinary school in the country. After everything she's seen today, the girl is nearly losing it and says that's impossible. Not about to let her doubt him. He points his baton at her and tells her to hand over proof to a student ID or anything like that. Once he gets it, he reads the name Jin Serum and checks whether it's real. He also sees she's the same age as him and confirms she really is from the Warrior Academy. Then, for some reason, he slips her ID into his pocket, and Jin immediately asks why. Jahawan says it's simple. She made him an offer. Since she now knows who he is, he needs insurance before taking her job. He can't risk her turning on him later. He adds that he never works without backup plans, and there's still one more thing he needs to do. The protagonist pulls out his phone, wraps an arm around Jin's shoulders, and drags her into a side hug, leaving her completely flustered. He says he's taking a selfie with her. If she betrays him, the photo will prove she was tied to a smuggler, too. As they pose, Jin is still frozen in shock, and Jahal suddenly realizes she may have gotten herself into something serious. With a threatening look, he tells her to smile, and that's when she understands his boy is far more dangerous than she thought. She forces out a shaky little laugh and fakes a smile for the camera, but backing out is no longer an option. It's already too late, so MC takes the photo with Jin beside the Titan's corpse. Afterward, he keeps staring at the screen to make sure the picture came out right. Once he's satisfied, he tells Jin it's time to talk payment and asks what she actually wants done. Still rattled by him, Serum says the job is to collect coins. Jin explains that during the 6-hour test, she has to gather coins hidden around the exam zone. To prove herself as a Warrior Academy student, she needs to find a box at a set location with a coin inside. She already got 1 coin, so she only needs 1 more pass. Then Jin says the last box she needs is nearby, and Jarong asks where. She tells him it's in the ruins of the old Eugene shopping mall. That answer catches him off guard, like he just figured something out. He says he gets it now, though Jin has no idea what he means. So he explains their meeting wasn't random because the thing he came for is also in that mall. After a quick explanation of his mission, the girl blurts out that she can't believe he's after the Imperial Wasp. Jirian corrects her right away. He's not after the wasp itself, just something it makes. Maybe honey or jelly. He's not fully sure. He says the jelly gives off a strong smell that pulls monsters in, which is probably why the primate titan showed up, too. Still, what matters now is whether she really has to go to the mall or if another coin is somewhere else. Looking uneasy, Jin says the mall is the only place left with a coin. The other groups probably took all the other boxes. Hearing that, the protagonist just looks at her, and once she mentions groups, he quietly understands why she was alone. Even so, Jeriong tells Jin it's fine. In fact, that makes things easier for him. He says they'll go in, grab the coin and the jelly, then get out safely. He's about to name his price, but Jin beats him to it and offers 950 million won. She says that's all the money she has, and the huge number instantly reminds him how rich she is. Some start to say she can get more if needed, but Yin cuts her off and says that's enough. As he turns toward their destination, he adds that the price goes up if things go bad, but if all goes well, that amount works. He asks if she can still run, and she quickly nods yes. With that, they break into a sprint through the forest toward the mall. A little behind him, the young woman is already struggling. Out of breath, she watches Yin Renyari run ahead like it costs him no effort at all. To her, his speed is unbelievable. Meanwhile, Jeriong sighed to himself, thinking he agreed too fast and should have asked for more since she's obviously rich. While they run, Jin calls out and asks if she can ask him something. Looking bored, he says, sure, and she asks if he really learned all of this on his own. He says, not everything, but most of it came from training by himself. As they keep moving, Xiaoyong starts talking about his past and says that when he was a kid, but before he can finish, he senses danger. 2 strange creatures are hunting nearby. They're Gari raptors, beasts from what used to be Baramidon, and Geo immediately tells Jin to get ready to fight. She stops at once, draws her bow, and prepares to attack. But before Jin can move, MC bursts forward and charges the monsters himself. He never had formal adventurer training. Everything he knows came from risking his life. Still, there was one exception. When he was young, he once saw his father move in a way he never forgot. From that, he picked up 3 special techniques. Closing in with his baton, Jiren uses one on the Giri Raptor. The first technique is called the needle. It uses all his speed and body weight to hit a vital point, and he lands it perfectly. The move is simple, but polished through experience, instinct, and raw talent. Even top adventurers haven't fully mastered it yet. Zhurong has, so the first monster drops in a single hit. The second beast is only 2-star, so Jin takes it down without much trouble, though she gets a few scratches. After putting away her bow, some says something feels wrong. Gary Raptors usually move in packs of at least 5. The protagonist says that means she wasn't the only one affected by the royal jelly scent. There are probably monsters all over the area, and by now, they've reached the edge of the city where the mall stands. Noticing she's not in great shape, you suggest a short break before they keep going. Going back to the earlier topic, Jin asks if he ever had any personal training when he was younger. He says no again. He only watched someone train and copied what he saw. And because he had to stay hidden from that person, he only managed to learn a few moves. Since people rarely ask him this, he wants to know why she cares so much. But instead of answering, Jin gets seriously frustrated and blurts out that after everything, she really doesn't like him. Then she suddenly throws something at Yua Jeriong, and he catches it without even knowing what it is. When he checks what she threw, MC sees it's a stamina vial, a really pricey one. He looks at Jin and asks if she's seriously giving it to him for free. Jin tells him to drink it already since he's clearly worn out and not at full strength. Instead, he points out the mixed message. She just said she didn't like him, and now she's handing him a gift. To her shock, he starts putting the vial away. She immediately asks what he thinks he's doing. Zhurong says he's not wasting it now. He can sell it later for cash, which only makes SEM matter. She snaps back that it's expensive for a reason, so he should quit arguing and use it. But he calmly says he knows exactly what it's worth, and on the black market, it would sell for a lot. Jin can only grumble to herself. He's weird, totally impossible, but right now he's still all she's got. Then the protagonist decides they've rested enough, and says they should move out, so the two head on. Seeing Jin still lost in thought, he figures rich kids really are strange. They act like money barely matters. Once they get near the mall, Zhurong says she already knows the plan, but they should review it one more time. Their job isn't to fight monsters. They're going in, taking what they need, and getting out fast. No matter what's inside, she has to follow his lead and stay calm. MC adds that she may have learned a lot, but survival is his thing, so she just needs to trust him. Even so, Jin keeps acting oddly, bothered by a strange feeling she can't explain. Back at the Warrior Academy, she used to be ignored and shut out. This is the first time she's gone into danger with someone who doesn't look down on her. As Zhurong rises, he tells her it's time to go. Jin still feels nervous, knowing real danger is right in front of them. Soon, they arrive at the old shopping mall. The moment they step inside, both of them tense up. A crushing pressure suddenly closes in around them, and Jin asks what it is. Zhurong doesn't know either. He's never felt anything like this before. Then they spot torn-up monster bodies ahead. Proof that something insanely strong came through here. Humans can be much braver than they think. If they have a reason, they can push through almost anything. What breaks them is when reality goes way beyond the plan. These monsters don't belong here, and even pro-explorers would struggle with them. Looking at the slaughter, they can't even guess what caused it. Zhurong tells Jin to stay focused. Something deadly is nearby, and she already knew this trip would be dangerous. She says she's only shaken because this is worse than she imagined, but the mission itself hasn't changed. Right after that, she catches movement in the dark. A shape shifts in the shadows, and he pulls out his spear. The creature rises. It's a slasher lip around 2 to 3 stars. The protagonist rushes it at once. The monster's mouth opens, and a huge tongue shoots at him, but he blocks it with his staff. Then he realizes something is off. The tongue is wrapped around his weapon. The beast yanks it back, and the pole drags him with it, before it can reel him into its jaws. He lets go of the staff. From above, he regains control, then drops in with a clean kick that lands perfectly. Jin watches from a distance, waiting for the right moment to help. Zhurong picks up his staff again. Jin is rattled that the thing was still alive, but he says that was on purpose. He kept it alive because if anyone else is nearby, its scream will warn him first. She asks who he was trying to warn. The answer, himself. He wasn't about to sit still and wait. Another person shows up saying he's had a lot to clean up, and it left him tired. Jin realizes he's another explorer. MC stays tense, and she asks if they know each other. The man says the two of them look too green to be smugglers. Then he spots the crest on Jin's clothes. In an instant, he's right in front of them asking if they're from the warrior school. Jin says yes, and he replies that whatever team they are, it's a shame because they're going to die here. Jin is horrified, but he tells her not to listen. This isn't some normal explorer. He's a villain here to kill and steal the royal jelly. The man says he wasn't supposed to touch his client's goods without permission, but that only matters if he gets caught. And so far, Luck has been on his side. He'd heard the target's partner was carrying something valuable. The plan was to ambush them on the way, but things changed. He failed to wipe them out earlier, and though he entered this place, he still hasn't found his target. He figures the man is hiding in some smuggler route. Hearing that, Jarong realizes the smuggling center lost contact because of this guy, not the wasp venom. So, the one in front of them caused all of it before the fight even began. The protagonist can already tell this enemy is trouble. The man even offers them a painless death if they cooperate. He's clearly on a whole different level from the weirdo they met before. MC tells Jin to grab the coins and run. He'll hold the man off for a while. After what this guy has done, there probably aren't many monsters left anyway, so she needs to move fast, but before he can finish, the enemy attacks. The strike is insanely fast, but it still misses. He immediately yells at her to run and stop hesitating. For his plan, and for the money, she has to stay alive. When the enemy sees her leave, he gets annoyed. He says splitting up is a bad choice since staying together gave them better odds. Jarong doesn't care. He steadies himself and gathers his strength. His eyes sharpen with total focus. He swings the staff with skill and raw force, and the enemy is startled when he realizes he telegraphed his move. A second later, the protagonist's foot slams straight into his face. The man is sent flying, but MC knows it's not over. The enemy admits he's impressed. He underestimated them because they were young, but now he'll use his gear. Even at that age, MC is already better than most pros, so he has to get serious. Then he tells him not to worry. It'll be over fast. This man is young Dagon, a gold-class adventurer. Elsewhere, someone says that wasn't bad at all, and adds that the instant noodles turn out great. He offers some to the bald man, but the offer gets turned down. Instead, he tells him to sit and wait since the guy sleeping on the job won't wake up anytime soon. The bald man is furious. He paid a lot for that man, and now he's passed out mid-mission. Pacing around, he says he used to be an adventurer. The other man tells him not to be too harsh. The sleeper didn't lose because he was weak. He lost because this kind of fight wasn't his specialty. Adventurers don't only battle monsters. That man was probably trained to hunt and explore, not to fight another human face-to-face. Since he wasn't used to that, losing to a smuggler makes sense. The bald man argues that he's heard plenty of adventurers fight each other too, and that part is true. The stronger they become, the bigger the rewards, and sooner or later, fights happen. Sometimes even teammates get greedy enough to betray each other. The bald man can't believe adventurers would kill one another, but there's usually no one there to stop it. And inside the dungeon, there are no rules. Just say a monster killed him, and that's enough. No alibi needed. The higher an adventurer climbs, the more ready they have to be to fight people, too. But this case was different. The sleeper's class just wasn't high enough, which is why he ended up flat on the ground. Picking a fight with a partner. That's almost cute. And if he got caught, then the fight must have happened outside the dungeon. It was probably a simple clash without equipment, though the bald man doesn't know what that means. Equipment is the weapons and armor an adventurer brings into a dungeon, even the small stuff. With that gear, even the sleeping guy could have done better. It matters that much. Equipment makes up half an adventurer's fighting power. Meanwhile, Jering knows the enemy didn't dodge. His hit landed clean and hard, right on target, but the blade's defense is high. While the protagonist thinks that over, the enemy warns him not to lose focus. The next strike comes fast, and MC barely blocks it with his staff. Letting his mind wander in a fight like this is dangerous. It disrespects both his enemy and his own life, which could end in a second. The man takes that opening and drives a kick into Jarong's stomach. The impact is brutal, sending him flying several meters. Before he could crash into anything, he dug his feet into the floor and stopped himself. The second he steadied himself, the weirdo was already back on him, swinging over and over with his blade. He couldn't block every hit, and a few cuts slipped through. One even sliced his cheek. Feeling in control now, the weirdo mocked him and told him to fight like before if he really could. That wasn't possible. The shadow jacket was S-rank armor, and the weirdo had one on. It burned the user's blood to raise defense against physical attacks and boost strength, too. Right now, he was fighting in berserker mode. Finding an opening would be tough, but not impossible. Still, one bad counterattack would get him killed. The fight kept going, and the weirdo was completely out of control. He suddenly slashed at stomach level, making the boy flinch, then laughed and said it was a feint. Even so, he'd lasted longer than expected. Then the boy did something strange. He asked if today was some kind of special day and took off his own jacket. Getting back up, he said he actually liked the weirdo's jacket. Even with all that, the guy wasn't as strong as he looked. His huge aura had scared him. But if this was all he could do against an unarmed student, then he was just a weak fighter hiding behind gear. The boy added that if he had a jacket like that, things would be different. That crushed the weirdo's pride, and he started yelling that the brat would pay for talking like that. Jarong knew he wasn't the one who had to rush. His opponent still had to win, find some, and kill her. If the fight dragged on, the edge stayed with him. That would make the weirdo lose patience, and the protagonist knew it. With his mind fixed on ending this fast, the weirdo charged in a rage. The boy braced himself, their weapons slammed together, aura bursting from both sides. He had learned this just from watching when he was little. This was the second technique. A blue aura vortex formed between them. He didn't have enough raw power, so he used the enemy's force against him to create an attack he couldn't do alone. The move, which he still hadn't mastered, was called Swell, and its power was brutal. That one strike hit like a truck. The impact exploded outward. Afterward, he had to lean on his staff. The technique had damaged his insides and taken a huge toll. He never thought he'd use that in a real fight. And to think a pro adventurer could be this simple, just charging straight ahead. He told the weirdo to give up because his time was up. Instead, the weirdo pulled out a dagger and told him to shut his mouth. His hand shook like he was scared. Then he suddenly drove the blade into his own chest. The boy didn't see that coming, but the weirdo said one thing was certain. No matter what, he'd kill that brat. Meanwhile, on the department store's 5th floor, Siram had reached her destination. There she found a box. She put her hand on the blue circle, and the box verified both her ID number and who she was. Now that she'd found it, all she had to do was go back. Then she felt the air change. She turned to check behind her. Siram remembered Jarong telling her to run to stay safe, because that was how they'd get the money. But now she thought running away wouldn't change anything. It took everything she had to keep believing those words. All she could picture was the weirdo's face. He wouldn't have picked that fight without some way out, right? As she weighed her choices, she remembered how much he loved bullying people at school. It was one of the things he enjoyed most. He really was a genius. Since he was young, he believed life would always be easy for him because his talent was obvious. Adults praising him just came with that. So did ruling over kids his age. But there was one thing that hadn't gone his way. He'd been rejected by the warrior school. To make himself feel better, he decided it had to be politics. Money beating talent. That was the only answer he would accept. Because if the choice had been based only on skill, there was no way they would have turned him down. In the endurance test, he'd ranked first. Compared to normal kids, he wasn't just gifted. He was far above them. Once again, he placed near the top, and nobody in class was even surprised. Still, he enjoyed being the one everyone talked about. Now, they were at the final task before graduation. After the ceremony, someone came up to him. It was the headmaster who congratulated him and said he'd make a fine adventurer. Then came a warning. Don't get arrogant and never stop moving forward. He only looked down on the man, thinking he was a washed-up loser stuck in a dull job. He swore he'd rise so high that people like the headmaster could only dream of it. But now he was on the dungeon floor shaking in fear. The adventurer who saved him said he'd rushed over because the situation felt dangerous. But he hadn't expected the monster to be this weak. Yet that same weak monster had wiped out his whole team. Reality was nothing like he imagined. The adventurer gave him a look he knew well. The same look he'd always given other people. That's when he understood. The old man's words hadn't been advice. They were comfort for what his future would really be. He wasn't one of the special few. He was only better than average. The ordinary people admired him, but he was only a little above them. That jacket had been made from a living vampire, and he was now forcing all his blood into his heart. That was the price to kill the boy. The boy asked if he was really sure, because that trick looked like it would wreck him later. But the weirdo charged anyway. The collision hit hard. Even after changing, he hadn't gotten much faster. The real change was how terrifying he looked. His attacks were heavy and wild. And then to the boy's shock, his arms started stretching. After everything else that had happened today, this was somehow another surprise. Blood dripped to the floor. The weirdo stared at his target, now breathing hard and stuck in a worn-down guard. Even so, he somehow blocked it. The weirdo praised his fast reactions and talent, then asked why someone like him had become a smuggler. The boy didn't get the question. He opened his mouth and asked what was with the sudden praise. Whatever he did with his life was none of the weirdo's business. Even so, the weirdo thanked him. Thanks to the boy, he'd finally get to crush someone truly talented. Thrilled, he moved to make that dream real. But the boy wasn't about to make it easy. Even after all that damage, his body still moved fine. Seeing that only made the weirdo more excited, and he urged him to show even more talent. The boy knew this ugly form couldn't last long. If blood was the fuel, then of course there had to be a limit, so he could push him into burning even more blood and force him to use the needle. But the weirdo had already thought of that. In his mind, it was too late for the boy. He swung again. Then a fiery blast hit his shoulder out of nowhere. The boy turned to see what happened. His friend had come back to help. He smiled at her, clearly not expecting that. Seriously, she never listens to him. Still, sometimes that side of her is kind of moving. With the weirdo in range, he smashed him again with the staff. Soon, the area was covered in debris and a thin haze hung in the air. The weirdo's body lay on the ground, though they still couldn't tell if he was really dead. The boy didn't think that was enough to finish him and told her not to worry about it. Holding up a picture of him, he said the guy probably wouldn't try revenge, doing that could ruin his whole career. For now, that should be enough. Picking up his staff, he asked if she'd already forgotten. He saved her life, so she owed him one. That made 2 times now. Once at the start and again when she chose to follow him, but since he's so generous, he'll count it as just 1. Annoyed, she asked if saying sorry would really hurt that much. In the parking lot, everything was wrecked. A golden light was shining up through a hole in the ground, and it had to be something worth checking out. So, they headed down the stairs toward it. As they got closer, a sweet smell filled the air. Near the bottom, they saw a body on the floor with a briefcase in its lap, and the golden glow was coming from it. He walked up carefully, then shut his eyes for a moment, like he was paying respect. Then, he looked at her and reminded her he'd already warned her about the kind of things she'd see, but she followed him anyway. Since they were here already, they decided to open the briefcase. He set his hands on it and started lifting it open. The smell was almost impossible to explain. It was sweet and strangely tempting, like it wanted anyone who smelled it to stop thinking. Left out in the open like this, it was probably drawing monsters in. Looking at the item beside it, he wondered if the bag also held royal jelly. His instincts told him they needed to leave fast because staying too long could bring trouble. They hurried back to the first floor, but the murderer's body was gone. If he was still alive, he'd escaped. Then a scream rang out. He shouted for them to wait and said he remembered every one of their faces. From now on, he'd do everything he could to ruin them and make them regret what they did that day. Burning with hate, the weirdo ran off, only to learn life had one more surprise waiting. A starving monster was already in front of him, leaping with its jaws wide open. This wasn't the ending he expected. He had no time to react and got eaten by the monster instead. His revenge would have to wait for another life. Not even the kids who spared him thought karma would hit that fast. Figuring it was time to go, they headed out the back. After walking a bit, he guessed they were finally safe. Then he asked about her test, learned she still had time, and held out his hand to say goodbye. He told her he was glad they met. Their time together had served its purpose, and she gave him a real, honest smile. They shook hands, both satisfied with what they'd done. As they parted, he reminded her to keep everything secret, send the payment, and be careful if she didn't want to run into him again. But before leaving, she asked if they could meet again someday. Cablin noticed some trash on the ground, then looked over with interest. The boy had come back, and his ripped clothes made it clear he'd been through a lot. Now, they decided to check the briefcase too. That familiar golden glow spilled out again. If this ever became public, it would be worth enough to buy a few buildings. He praised the boy for the job and said the payment would be sent soon. Then he took another look at him while putting out his cigarette. Buck looked off, so Cababalanho asked what was wrong. Was he bothered by the adventurer who died fighting him? But that man died afterward, and it wasn't something he should feel guilty about. So Cababalanho asked if anything else happened down there. The boy brushed it off, saying it was nothing and telling him to stop asking. Then he looked at the briefcase and asked if he could keep what was left since it didn't seem to be royal jelly. Cabalano agreed. Anything outside the target item belonged to the smuggler. That was the rule. He just wanted to know which kid was supposed to eat it. It could bring someone back from the brink of death, but that wasn't its only use. It could also raise a person's limit and bring out more of their natural talent. The details were still unclear, but it only worked on people who weren't adults yet, so they wouldn't waste it on someone older. It was probably meant for a student from the warrior school. Yayu Jeriong said he was heading out, and Cabalanho wished him luck. He also asked him to greet her father if he got the chance. The boy said he would. Lately, things hadn't been going great. Outside, he stared at the evening sky and thought about the warrior school and what the girl had told him. He asked her straight up if she was interested in him, but she said she was serious. The entrance exam was in winter. Only a handful got accepted, but she told him he had a real shot and should go for it. No adventurer can clear a dungeon alone, no matter how strong they are. The things inside dungeons are too much for one person to handle by themselves. That's why teams matter. People with different skills work together, cover each other's weak spots, and grow stronger. That's how dungeons get explored. He asked if the school's political groups just fought each other. She told him if it were that simple, nobody would be worried. Their class had 2 factions, and each was led by one of the top 3 students. He asked if she belonged to either one, and she said no. The teachers don't step in because students are expected to find their own team. She knew what he meant that this was happening because she wasn't strong enough. She also knew she'd never be a top student. Still, she should have been able to join some team, even one tied to a faction, but one faction leader clearly disliked her. She never said out loud. Yet, she kept pushing her away from everyone else. Jarian asked if she'd stolen that girl's boyfriend, but that wasn't it. Either way, she'd manage alone so far, but she wouldn't survive the coming years like that. That's why she wanted to hire Guardian. With his skill, or really just with him, she thought she might survive. As she thought it over, she glanced at the medicine on the counter. She really was a strange girl. She let out a tired sigh after such a rough day. At last, she reached the place she'd been heading to and announced herself. It was the 12th dungeon barrier in Gangnam. While waiting, she thought about the boy she met. Before they parted, he said he'd heard her out and wished her luck. She figured he probably wouldn't bring it up again. Then, someone told her she wasn't late. It was Kong, the instructor in charge of hand-to-hand combat training. She asked if something had happened since she still had time. He said there'd been a problem. Monsters not usually found in that area had shown up. No one had died, but some students said the test couldn't be finished and asked for help. Those students had been in the same area where she found the coin. He looked at her and asked if she had trouble too. Nervously, she said no. He accepted that without comment, then told her to stay behind him. Right away, she felt a terrifying presence. When she looked, her fear got even worse. It was another monster like the one that ate the weirdo, only much bigger. A titan ape showing up there was highly unusual since they don't live anywhere close. Maybe something had drawn it in, and she quickly guessed what it was. The same scent she noticed before. The instructor told Sirium again to stay behind him, and she apologized. That monster wanted nothing but to devour them. Every instructor at this school used to be an adventurer. Some quit because old injuries finally caught up with them. That's how outsiders think of them. But one punch from that instructor was enough to crush the titan. The blow forced it down, and flames raced up his arm. The moment the fire reached its head, the monster was blown apart. Its body dropped to the ground. Back in their prime, these instructors had been rankers. Even after it died, the monster's head kept bursting apart. His prosthetic was ruined, and he told the girl she was lucky he came. Otherwise, this could have ended very badly. Even then, he placed a hand on her shoulder. The important thing was that she was safe. Now it was time to head somewhere secure. People forget the instructors there are warriors too. Back at school, they talked about the students who called for rescue. Those students would get to retake the test, which was lucky for them. He called them weaklings, and while they were talking, said one of them had just arrived. The one-armed man looked at her and told her to go inside and wait. He said he'd make sure everyone was accounted for, and she should check the count and change into her uniform. She definitely felt safer now. A girl told her she knew she'd be fine. At least her method was fast. That fake concern came from Anisha, who claimed she'd been really worried about her classmate. She answered that she never expected Anisha to worry about her. Keeping up the act, Anisha said it wasn't her speaking, it was her sister. It all began 6 years earlier. Zeke, Sirum's uncle, told her she needed to increase her output. She had to pay attention and stay focused, but that took more effort than she could manage. He ended the training and said that was enough, adding that she had improved since last time, just not by much. Then she heard cheering nearby. Worn out, she turned to look. It was her sister showing far more talent. Anisha had mastered the technique easily. She didn't even look like a hybrid, and her magic control was better than that of many purebloods. He called her cousin a genius, and warned that if she kept going down this path, she'd always live in Anisha's shadow, and the constant comparisons would be the least of her problems. He also told her to be careful because the girl seemed cruel. Still acting innocent, Anisha said she didn't get it. Why did nobody want to be on the same team as her? Before she could answer, Anisha cut in and said if she really wanted to know, she should just team up with her. But that wouldn't work. They both filled the same role, healing magical damage from a distance. Having two people do the same job made no sense. That was a problem for others, not her. Still, she said there was no reason to worry because there would probably be another test. So, she answered that she didn't care about the test. She had already passed. Anisha said she was impressed and that her sister must have worked hard, but warned her not to push too much. After all, she was the one who had to inherit it anyway. That short exchange left her furious. What Anisha really wanted was for her to give up. Later that night, the door suddenly opened. Yong rushed in, clearly shaken. The patient's guardian had arrived, and he immediately asked if something had happened. Sadly, his father had gotten worse again. The doctors couldn't fully explain it. His condition was incredibly rare, maybe unique in the whole world. There was no medical record of anyone else surviving dragon blood poisoning. Yoga already knew the truth. All they could do was ease his father's pain. They couldn't cure him, but even that had become a problem. The ingredients for the pain medicine were running short. At this stage, the only thing that could help was milk from an extremely dangerous monster, the flying tiger, a 5-star threat. He said he had money, but the doctor made it clear the issue wasn't money. A new potion had become popular with adventurers, one that boosted strength for a long time, even in small amounts, and one of its key ingredients was that monster's milk. It used to be something you could buy if you had cash since people thought it was mostly useless. But now, companies and adventurers were buying huge amounts of it. Jirian gets angry. They don't even have a little of the medicine for someone who's dying. But the doctor says that's not the real problem. The issue is the dose. What his father needs equals enough material to make 10 of those strength potions. If more patients needed it, maybe the government would step in. But since his father is the only known case, that won't happen. They promise to do what they can, but without that ingredient, there's almost nothing left to try. After hearing that MC sits on a bench, lost in thought, his life just keeps getting harder, and he pulls out his phone to make a call. He calls the girl he met earlier. Xiaoyong asks if it's too late, but she tells him it's fine. He gets straight to it. He doesn't have many choices left, so he's ready to accept her offer. She hears him out, then asks if he has any conditions. After listening, she says she'll check on it and that it might actually work. He can hardly believe it, but she confirms she can help. Her company makes that potion, and since he only needs a small amount, getting it done is possible. He never expected that answer, but he's relieved. So, they make a verbal deal. She also reminds him to get ready for the entrance exam. After all, there's no downside to preparing early. The next day, Xiaoyong heads to the company headquarters. She points out that he came earlier than expected. When he walks up, she asks how he's feeling, and he says he's okay. The protagonist asks what they're doing here, and she tells him they're going to test his potential. She explains that the world has changed a lot. In the past, a normal human could usually only reach D rank. Getting to C meant you were basically a genius. Anything above B goes beyond normal human limits. Even without counting magic, explorers need at least C rank in 5 categories. To enter warrior school, you need B rank in at least 3. Shirao Yong asks if this is just some kind of physical test. She says that's how they test kids, but after puberty, it gets more complicated. He asks what makes it different, and once he's put into a strange suit, he starts to understand. Now he sees why the process is harder. Really, he should have realized it when she first asked how he felt. Then he sees what he's up against, a battle robot. Since he's already here, Shirao Yong decides to give it everything he's got. He wants to know what his real limit is, so he gets ready to fight the robot. Blue light starts shining from the dummy, and smoke rises as it powers up. The girl watches, impressed. Another woman beside her says he's gutsy. Most people freeze when they see the golem. This woman is Young, a golem expert, and she's curious about the boy trying to transfer. Siram gives a quiet smile, because she knows that's not the whole story. After setting down her coffee cup, she gets ready for the aptitude test to begin. The golem shifts in motion and prepares to attack. Xiaoyong doesn't look scared at all. Siram explains this test is usually done around the 6th or 7th year, and the suit helps collect exact data. That way, they can push the body to its limits in several areas. Even then, it's hard to tell if someone is truly gifted or just someone who's trained for a long time. She already knows Xiaoyong is physically strong, so pushing him all the way won't be easy. Still, he should be getting tired by now. When the other woman calls out to Siram, she wants to know if this is really the same boy who failed his special school entrance exam. She's honestly curious. With talent like this, he must have failed at something serious. Even at lower settings, that model is normally used to train pros. After dodging a few times, MC reads the pattern and finds a chance to strike. His skill is absurd. Based on instinct alone, he's already above the average pro. Saruman asks for the measurement results. The answer isn't simple. Hungi still hasn't reached his limit. They need to raise the difficulty, but moving it up by 1 or 2 levels won't be enough. It has to go all the way to max power. And Jang asks if Siram understands the risk. Doing that as someone unregistered is illegal, but without it, they can't find his real ceiling. Siram starts thinking of some other option. Then, as she steps in, someone complains that this isn't what he's paid for. She turns startled to see who came in. It's Director Zeke. He says no one uses the lab without reporting the reason. First, Siram sees her uncle and is surprised. She didn't expect him there on a Sunday. He says there'd better be a reason she's willing to risk getting arrested over. Siram tells him it's all on her. She was the one who asked for this. Zeke presses her, asking if that's really true or if she's just covering for an employee. He reminds her this place belongs to her father, not to her, so she can't just claim responsibility whenever she wants. The rumors about the director are true. He's her mother's brother, and he's always treated her coldly, even though she's done nothing wrong. Since it's the weekend, other adventurers tied to the company are using the place, too. He keeps lecturing until Zhang speaks through the intercom. He asks if something's wrong up there. Zeke asks who that is and whether he's worth this trouble. An employee says he's Siram's friend. She explains that he failed his entrance exams and lost his potential registration, so he came here for help. Because the process is expensive, she only wanted to help a friend who couldn't pay. Zeke looks at the battered golem and thinks for a moment. Then he says he'll handle it himself. The employee asks what exactly he means. Zeke says the golem wasn't enough and safe mode can't be turned off, so he'll go down there and test his friend himself. Jarong still isn't sure what's happening. Still, it's not unusual for adventurers to clash when someone's trying to measure another person's limits. In this case, though, the one facing him is on a completely different level. Zeke says he'll skip the introductions because he doesn't have time to waste. Right away, he realizes this guy is definitely not normal. He has no idea who he's about to fight, but every instinct in his body screams danger. Zeke tells him to come at him. The strange man from earlier had been his first fight, but this is different. No matter how he looks at it, this doesn't feel like an opponent he can beat. Even so, once he's told to attack, he starts a move. He doesn't need to worry about Zeke getting hurt. So, Jarong begins working out his plan. He draws in his aura and finally charges. Zeke doesn't move at all. He just waits. Looks and fool you. Zeke is the 7th strongest ranker in Korea. A white class adventurer. The protagonist can't find even one opening, but he refuses to quit. If there isn't an opening, he'll make one. His plan is simple. The second Zeke dodges, he'll follow with one strike from behind. He wants to use that dodge itself to create the chance, but Zeke catches the staff with one hand. That was not the outcome Jerry Young wanted. Zeke is way stronger than he imagined, and even Zeke notes that the kid is more reckless than expected. Then, with MC right in front of him, Zeke drops him with a single kick. The hit is brutal. He goes flying into the wall. Still, one thing doesn't make sense to Zeke. Did Jar Young attack like that because he knew it was a test, or did he really think it could work? Either way, Zeke thinks it was a foolish move. He kicks the staff back to the protagonist with his foot. The boy is still conscious, but he'd lost his only weapon for a moment. That alone puts MC on even higher alert. Then, Zeke lets him have the staff back. Up to now, he's been going easy on the boy's bad decisions. But one more mistake, and Zeke says he'll make sure Jarong regrets ever becoming an adventurer. He sets his feet and takes an attacking stance. He doesn't know why, but he can feel some personal hostility from Zeke. Still, he doesn't let it get to him. He rushes in again to attack. Zeke expects the same pattern as before because the approach looks similar, but Jarong suddenly plants one foot hard, and that instantly makes Zeke focus. 2 attacks are coming at once. That long-range strike was meant to catch him off guard, but even that isn't enough. The protagonist figures this guy still isn't satisfied, which is fine because he's only getting started now. Though his staff shines bright blue as he prepares a stronger attack. Even Zeke still doesn't know what he'll do next. Another string of attacks comes rushing in. Letting out some aura, Zeke admits it's not bad. He tightens his fists and blocks every attack that comes at him. From above, the employee watches in shock. It looks less like a test and more like a fight between 2 pros. Judging by the skill on display, it's hard to believe this boy still hasn't gotten into any school. Still, he isn't good at everything. Shame asks what she means, and the employee says he has one big weakness holding him back. In that area, she adds, Samro is much better than he is, which makes Samron wonder what that weakness could be. From where she's standing, Shamron looks like he's keeping up with Zeke. Now she really wants to know what's wrong with him. MC barely slips past a blow, and that punch almost lands right on his exposed face. The employee starts watching with real concern. Now Jerryong has lost his edge and is getting hit again and again. He's in terrible pain and can't react fast enough to defend himself, but he still forces himself to fight back. With one swing of the staff, he finally drives Zeke away. Zeke notes that he managed to keep control of his staff at the last second. And that's true because right after that, Zeke's fist slams into his stomach. The protagonist is thrown into the wall again. The director is incredible, and Sam can tell he's still holding back. She watches closely as Zeke tells Jarong not to get hung up on losing. It was going to happen anyway. What bothers him is how pitiful MC's path to that loss looks. He doesn't even have the basics. The employee agrees with that. His talent and reflexes are amazing, but his foundation is missing. It's like he's never trained a day in his life. Cheyenne is let down. If Jerry Young had learned the basics early on, his talent could have gone much farther. Sam recalls he once said, no one ever taught him. Zeke says he's met plenty of people like that. A lot of gifted people never polish what they have, but San knows the protagonist isn't one of them. Zeke gives him that much, then tells him to quit. If someone this weak trusts talent alone, he'll end up dead. MC gets back up and snaps that Zeke has it all wrong. He's been talking like MC is some lazy fool, and it's getting on his nerves. That catches Zeke off guard. His last hit was supposed to finish it. Juryong says he doesn't care how it ends. He wants one more round, and this time he'll show the result of his hard work. The employee asks what is wrong with these two. She finds it funny they still want to fight when they already have enough data to judge his potential. Even CM steps in saying there is no need to keep going. He can stop here and look at the results. Zeke says whatever he is planning, it won't change anything. He even assumes the boy is just looking for praise from him, but that's not what he's after. Juryong is just furious, and right now he wants to punch that smug elf in the face. No one taught him anything, so he had to figure it all out by himself. Still, it wasn't hopeless. He was born with talent that let him cover parts the basics should have taught him. On top of that, he has tons of real battle experience, so he learned to move however he needed. He improved fast, but he never thought he was above everyone else. If anything, he was usually let down by so-called prodigies who turn out weaker than him. But Zeke is different. Juryong wants to smash that elf. Yet, he knows he's facing a monster far beyond him. Then he notices the aura pouring off Zeke. Now, the elf is taking him seriously. The moment he faced someone he saw as a true wall, his blood started to boil. Watching them, the employee calls this insane and wonders why the director is getting pulled into it too. Serial spots the change right away. His base is different now, and his stance puts more weight forward. These two aren't fighting like before anymore. Juryong lets out a calm breath, sets himself, and attacks again. This time will be different. His opening strike comes in hard. Zeke avoids it, but the edge still nicks his cheek. Even the employee can't believe what she's seeing. Juryon's whole approach has changed. Even so, Zeke keeps slipping past every attack. They're still rough and basic compared to before, but the openings are gone. Whoever taught him that, or whatever he learned from, is incredible. Right now, the protagonist only wants to beat this elf. He thinks back to the person he watched as a kid. He copied everything that man did as best he could. Zeke gets tired of dodging, grabs the staff with one hand, and launches a counter. MC barely manages to block. When he was little, Jurien used to copy him with pure excitement. Now he's up against the strongest enemy he's ever met, and Zeke clearly wants to crush him too. That man had found the little boy's effort interesting. This time, Zeke lands a blow. Back then, that man had looked at the tiny kid with real interest. Zeke swings again, but Juryong barely slips past it. He whips his staff around for a counter, fully trusting his skill. Long ago, that man had simply patted his head and looked at him with admiration. That strike would have been nasty if it landed, so Zeke has to jump. The instant he touches down, there should be an opening. Zeke knows that if he attacks, then he won't be able to dodge. Still, he's ready to give the boy what he's been chasing this whole fight. Since dodging isn't an option, Zeke charges straight at him. The others can only stare, stunned by what they're seeing. Smoke spreads through the arena. That was the last exchange. If Jurong hadn't used that strange staff technique, Zeke would have won for sure if the fight had gone on. Zeke asks if that was the protagonist's pride talking. MC smiles and says, no, that's just all he knew. Everything he had managed to memorize. In the end, he only got beaten even worse. Still, Zeke says it wasn't bad at all. Zeke isn't very popular with the people around him because he's a pain to deal with, but no one can really question his judgment. His ability is the real deal. He holds a hand over Jurong and LT, Unk and GT, S-face, and starts using his power. The aura slowly rises. When his niece worries, Zeke tells her not to. The boy will be fine. He's already healed him. He just wants to know if the boy's name is Yu. Zeke is one of the top 10 rankers in the country, and even he didn't expect to run into something like this today. Who would have guessed he'd meet that man's son here? After all, Zeke is Korea's best healer. The sun finally begins to set. Someone grumbles that if Zeke was going to be late, he could have at least sent a message. They could have had coffee and relaxed, but now they'll be late to the briefing again. And whenever that happens, everyone blames him. Zeke just says something came up and took longer than he thought. The young man says he heard Zeke was dueling some kid, but with this much delay, it sounds like it turned into several rounds. Then he gets a closer look and freezes. A small mark is on Zeke's cheek. The more he stares, the more shocked he gets, which makes Zeke curious. He asks if the mark is really a cut. Zeke, already annoyed, asks what else it would be. The young man still can't believe it. Then that boy must be ready for school. Maybe 16. Zeke corrects him. He's 17. Looks like he'll try for the warrior school during winter admissions. That route is real, but no one has passed it in the last 3 years. Still, he definitely has a shot. Cutting Zeke's cheek isn't easy. This new generation is getting scarier and scarier. Zeke says comparing anyone to elves is unfair, and he's sure the boy isn't on the same level as the young man either. Kong disagrees. He's ranked 19, a black class explorer, and the leader of the Nyx attack squad. He believes he still has the edge over Jerry Young in talent and experience. He's only 21 and finished school a year and a half ago. Zeke just lets out a sigh after hearing that. He mentions he hadn't seen that car before, and the young man says he usually doesn't spend much, so he treated himself this time. The protagonist is still lying on a stretcher. After a while, he finally sits up. He checks his hands and realizes every wound is gone. More than that, he doesn't feel any pain at all. The girl says he's finally awake. She asks what he was thinking. Did he really believe he could win? Jerryong says that wasn't the point. He was just really mad. And the other guy started it, but but even she doesn't get why her uncle wanted to fight him. MC then asks if they're actually related. They are. He's her uncle from her mother's side. When he goes quiet, she gets curious. Jurong says it's nothing, then adds that they seem close, judging by how Zeke treats her. She doesn't see how he came to that conclusion, but he says it's obvious to him. He says he could feel the concern of an uncle worried some stranger might be messing with his niece. She disagrees, saying Zeke isn't really warm like that. If anything, he's very strict. The staff member comes in and notices he's awake already. She asks if anything hurts, and the protagonist says his body feels fine. She says that makes sense. Zeke's healing would even fix old injuries. It may not look like it, but the director is the best healer in the country. That surprises Jarong. Despite being so strong, fighting isn't even his main job. MC smiles at that. Either way, she's glad he's okay, and she already has the results. Sankum says they're actually amazing. A in stamina and agility, B in strength and endurance, and C in intelligence. Looking over the data, Jarong asks if that's really so impressive. Serum snaps at him to shut up, and the staff member wonders if he's actually ready for school. To become a high explorer, you need at least a few B-rank stats, but they also have to be balanced. Being fast means nothing if your stamina is bad, and huge strength is pointless if you can't move well. She explains that most people only have C-rank ability, but having more than one strong stat changes everything. Having C or higher in strength, stamina, and agility happens to only one person in 10,000. If those stats go even higher, it's closer to 1.5 million. And that alone puts him near the top. Juring doesn't just have A, B in strength, he has A in the other two. He's not only balanced, he's far above average. Even as a first year, he'd be on the same level as that monster. Then she asks if he wants to hear something interesting. The person he just fought doesn't have a single stat above. Stats only show total potential. They don't equal real combat ability. Training is what creates the real gap, and that's still not the whole story. There are things no test can measure, like fighting spirit and real field experience. It might sound harsh, but she's seen plenty of explorers make up for their weak spots through pure grit. Siren blushes, knowing that comment was aimed at her. After hearing all that, Jeong thanks her. He's not upset or disappointed. He just doesn't fully get it yet, because compared to someone he knows, he's still way behind. The staff member is surprised he knows someone like that. That's rare. Whoever it is must be famous, and he admits that's kind of true. Sarum says they're done for today and can meet again next week. But since they're already here, the staff members suggest they stop by the medicine production department. Still, the girl hesitates, worried her uncle might be upset, but the staff member says the director already approved it. Sarum can't believe it, and asks if he really said that before leaving. Apparently, his order was simple. Once the boy woke up, bring him to the equipment workshop. He also said everyone should treat the boy as his guest, even if it means making him a custom weapon, no matter the cost. Sarum is stunned. Top-tier gear is every adventurer's dream, even for someone insanely gifted. If your gear is bad, it can't match your strength. And as an explorer gets stronger, they need equipment that can keep up. Hearing all this, he still doesn't get what's going on. He wonders why he'd need gear already when he's just going to school. But Sarum says he's got the wrong idea. He thinks the school gives students their equipment. That leaves them speechless. And Sarum knows that misunderstanding is on her. At a normal school, he'd be right. Each one has its own rules for what gear students can use. Yudra Young figures the warrior school must provide it since they have the most resources. Young explains it's not about money. Getting good equipment is a skill too. That's why students have to bring their own gear. He says that only helps people with money and asks if being rich counts as a skill. He's not exactly wrong, but even broke students can still get great equipment. Just getting into this school means a student has the talent to become a top explorer, maybe even a star, and that kind of potential attracts investors. Companies quickly take interest in students because they see business in backing them. The offers are huge since these are major corporations. She says she got a scholarship from the Jinsong Group, and even a guaranteed job until retirement. Without looking surprised, he listens as she adds that this is the kind of chance the school opens up. He'll have plenty of chances to prove himself against the other students, but first he has to pass the exam. The transfer test is even harder than the entrance one, so he needs to prepare. And getting equipment is part of that. That's why the director wanted to help since she already passed along the message. All he has to do is head to the refinery in the basement. She wishes him luck and hopes he gets in. He says things could have gone badly, and Sam asks how. His answer, he never expected her uncle to help this much. The more he hears about the test, the more it sounds like people will do anything to pass. That's exactly why she wants to help, even if she has to use her own money. That look on his face annoys her every single time. Even so, he's glad to hear it because money alone isn't enough. The person making the gear matters, too. And this company's equipment division is one of the best in the world. When they reach the forge, He says one piece of gear shouldn't be that different from another. But what he sees changes his mind. The forge is massive, built inside a former dungeon called the Bubbling Abyss. So asks what he thinks. He realizes this isn't the kind of place where you casually ask for something to be made, and a chill runs through him. Then a giant figure appears behind them. The boy spins around at once, ready to fight. The figure grumbles that Zeke dragged him out of his weekend nap, and didn't even bother coming to the forge himself. Tyrion asks if it's a monster, but Serum says no, he's the head of the equipment division, though Tyrion isn't fully wrong. He's an ancient titan named Argus. Basically, a monster by human standards, but he was naturalized in Korea through a special rite. As he lights a cigar, Argus asks which human Zeke was talking about. Is it this little boy or the elf's niece? She says the information was already sent to him, but Argus brushes that off. Digital records are a human thing, and he doesn't care for them. His staff handles that, but it's a day off, so no one's around. Still, that doesn't matter. Since Zeke asked him to handle this himself, he says they should begin. He points to the boy's weapon and asks if that staff is his main one. Jirian says yes. Argus immediately tells him to try hunting him. So tenses up and asks what he's doing. Argus says this is how his kind judges people. If the boy can't prove himself, he won't bother with the job. Still, he admits the boy feels different. Sharp eyes, used to hunting with killing intent that can be honed. Then he tells him again, try to beat him. Sarah stays on edge as Jirian gets ready. She warns Argus that he rarely refuses a challenge like this. At once, the Titan's eye widens. The boy has already moved in. He swings the staff with real skill and power. While Serene watches nervously, the impact knocks Argus' cigar to the ground, and even he finds that unbelievable. Unhurt, he demands to know where the boy got that weapon. That throws Jirian off. He knows the hit landed clean. Sure, there are monsters he can't beat in one strike, but hitting this thing felt like smashing into a huge wall. Not just tough, more like striking something lifeless. Now he wants to know what kind of monster he just attacked. And there's another reason Sar is so shaken. Monsters are ranked by stars. 1-star monsters are already dangerous enough to kill humans, but a normal armed person can still take one down. At 2 stars, the danger jumps. A trained person with guns can handle them. 3 stars are much worse. Those need armed forces with heavy weapons. At 4 stars, it becomes a disaster. Ground troops stop fighting and focus on evacuation and damage control. After that, artillery and bombs are used to wipe them out. That's the military's limit. Anything above 5 stars is beyond modern armies. Even if they win, the cost is massive destruction. So, elite explorer teams are sent instead. Argus is a 7-star monster, and he asks again, where did the boy get that weapon? Jirian asks if it hurt him more than expected and doesn't get why Argus keeps pressing him. Argus tells him to think very carefully before he answers, because he's the one who made that staff. Jirian is shocked. Now irritated, Argus says he'll ask one last time. Why is this weapon in Jirian's hands instead of the person it was forged for? If Argus made it, then the staff is above a rank, and it should be registered with the association, including the owner's identity and exact location. This isn't the kind of item a smuggler just gets hold of. Refuses to believe he might have stolen it, but Jirian says he won't explain and doesn't owe them an answer. Sarum calls that stupid and Argus says he understands. Now he'll judge the boy with that in mind. The moment that happens, Jirian thinks only of death. There's no way to dodge, no clear way to block, and no weakness in a monster's hand. Taking the hit means dying, so there's only one option left. The last technique he learned by watching his father. Argus notices something change, but still brings his attack down. When 2 forces crash Eden, the bigger one wins. But things change if they don't meet directly. With the exact angle and timing, even if victory is impossible, the force can still be redirected. Sarah can't believe he dodged an attack from a 7-star monster. Argus waits to see what comes next. Jirian knows his only chance is to stab the giant single eye with a needle. But before he can reach it, the Titan's prosthetic hand grabs him. It pulls him right up to its face. She steps in, saying, the boy may look suspicious, but that still doesn't give RGS the right to attack a human, and he should remember the consequences. Naturalized species can't attack humans unless it's truly an emergency. If they do, they lose their rights and are treated like hostile monsters. Argus lets the boy go and tells her not to worry. He knows that rule very well. In fact, he's finally figured out why the boy has the weapon he made. That's why Zeke woke him from his nap. He apologizes and says the boy has every right to carry that staff, and he'll make up for his mistake. Then his eye catches something else. It's been 30 years since anyone.